The walls are closing in on the Islamic Republic right now to basically suffocate the Islamic Republic. Because as time goes, usually as time goes by, the Islamic Republic gets stronger. Right now, as time goes by, the Islamic Republic is getting weaker. There's so much internal conflict. The Europeans finally basically declared the Islamic Republic, like the IRGC, to be terrorist. Guys, that's very significant, even though it's very small, very late. So, Danny, you're adding people to the list as they're raising their hand, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, even though it's very late and we actually expect a lot more from the Europeans, we do want them to completely shut down their embassies. I mean, I saw Italy do that, which is kind of shocking. I hope that's permanent. But still, putting the IRGC on the terrorist list means that there is no more fines for dealing with IRGC. There's prison sentences. So you have to understand how risk averse businesses are when it comes to, like, sometimes even if there's a fine, businesses will, like, you know what, I could deal with the fine. There's just too much money here to ignore. Like, if there's a fine. But now that there's prison sentences, that's going to make a lot of people allergic to deal with anything IRGC related. That's really influential to basically make the Islamic Republic weaker before there is an attack. There is, like, right now a lot of internal division within the Islamic Republic, so that's going to cause a lot of chaos within the Islamic Republic. And also, like, the Venezuelan oil is now going to be like, US is working to get India to buy oil from Venezuela instead of the Islamic Republic, which is going to be very problematic for the Islamic Republic when it comes to affording things right now. And they need it the most right now. Guys, I showed a video before on the show with the Islamic Republic trying to give a morale boost to the oppressing forces, the riot control police, because I think a lot of them can't handle going through this much violence. The Islamic Republic needs to spend a lot more on mercenaries and other types of people to be able to maintain control. So any economic pressure on the Islamic Republic is devastating to the regime. This is why Princess of Pahlavi's call to action to Iranians outside of Iran is to put more economic pressure on the Islamic Republic and make it more isolated, because this might take longer than a lot of people anticipate. I mean, I just saw that the George W. Bush USS Carrier Group is in the US and is scheduled to be in the Mediterranean by March. So we might be actually waiting until, I don't know if this waiting until that arrives in the Mediterranean Sea for something to happen. Again, remember, guys, the attack could happen like right now as we speak, but it could take much longer than a lot of people anticipate. Because again, remember the attack on, you know, Saddam both times took a lot of preparation. The attack on Afghanistan took a month of a preparation. The attack on Saddam when he was occupying Kuwait, that took 5 months of preparation. The attack on Panama took a few months of preparation when United States did regime change over there. So remember, United States has a lot less risk tolerance when it comes to accepting damages than Israel. So they need to make sure, like, when they want to attack, if there's a huge scale attack, they have to basically protect everything, because politically, Americans are a lot less forgiving to their politicians for going into a war where they have to accept a lot of that. Israelis are more forgiving because Israelis consider every war a war for the survival of Israel. So they understand that sacrifices sometimes need to be made, but Americans are less tolerant of giving losses, because Americans are like, well, we're not in an existential crisis. So if you go to war, you better make sure that nobody dies, right? So that's why Americans really need to make sure that the damages are to the minimum. And that's why this level of preparation is required before they do, or else you would lose all political capital for anything you want to do later. Jeffrey, you wanted to add a few points to this before we go down the list?
Yeah, you touched on most of them. That, and also again to reiterate, the environment is fluid and changing, and so we're modifying just as the enemy's modifying. Doesn't mean so if you're that's also going to play a role in how and when and where. You hit the ones I was going to hit.
Awesome. Okay, guys, when Jeffrey's a security expert, so when he says you hit the ones I wanted to hit, that makes me very proud of myself. Thank you, Jeffrey. Okay. Okay, so
Zana
Danny,
says she's ready now.
Susanna, you ready? Oh, Oh, there we go. Well, we don't hear you. Okay. So
Wait, wait. Now, how about now?
now we hear you. Fantastic.
Okay, good. Hi, I don't know, I feel like things are really hitting me in waves, you know? Like there are some days where like things aren't so bad and then there are some days where it's like I can't it's just too hard. The main reason why I wanted to talk today is because I was wondering if there would maybe be a way that we could help one of my friends. So one of my close friends that lives here with me, they just found out that her cousin was, like, basically disappeared, and a few days ago, they made her do a forced confession, and so now they're, like, posting about it to try to get attention on her case for obvious reasons. I don't really need to elaborate on why, and so I was wondering if it'd be possible to, like, maybe talk about it on the show, or if you could, like, repost about it. Or yeah, just try to get more attention on her case, like, I've been talking to her and she's like, we just need this, like, post to go viral to get more attention on it." But at the very least, what I know I can do is post about it in the school, in this community on here, and if the people here would repost it or share it on your stories, that would mean a lot to me because I know that, like, we're so powerless and helpless right now, but it would mean a lot to me.
Can you give us more? Okay. So was this a forced confession that she's working against the Islamic Republic as an agent of Zionists, like some bullshit like that? Is that what? How
Basically.
do they? Yeah.
Basically, I mean,
Okay.
I didn't wanna go watch it. I know where to find it.
You have it. There's a video of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all in Persian,
Oh,
so I can't understand anyways, but from what has been communicated to me by my friends, it's the same old
can you
accusations
send me
as
the link?
always. I can get it to you right now, but she was
And
like
if you can send me the post and the link as well, and if you have more
mhm,
details that you wanna talk, you can send me, and I can contact Israeli reporters, and I can see if we can get the story out as well.
that'd be
So
amazing. I
there.
have all her information and
So Jeffrey is asking in Iran. Can you clarify what's happening to people who might not know? Like, they would like yes. So she's in Iran. She's arrested by the Islamic Republic. They made her do a forced confession. And guys, this is very important. Like what Susie, what you're doing is very important because a lot of times we were told by some people that you shouldn't bring attention to these things because that will make their case worse. And those people who believe that narrative, they executed so many. So now everyone's understanding is that maximum attention is needed. Anybody telling you like, no, you're going to make her case more difficult, that's going to worse against her. Like a lot of data shows that maximum attention to everyone's case that is being arrested is the way to go.
yeah. Like, anyone who we could get her story to would mean a lot. Like, I don't have the same connections that you have, Armin, but I'm just so thankful for our community here. Because I know that so many of you don't actually have Iranian community where you live. A lot of you guys maybe don't even know any Iranian people in your locality, and the way that you guys care, it means so much. And I'm so grateful. I think for me it's just been like hard because of as we get more access and more stories are coming out and more images are coming out, like just so many names, so many faces. And some days it's just like, when is it gonna stop? So I can't tell you how much it means to me and all of my friends that you guys are helping and doing something.
Susie, do you know if she was arrested during the main 2 days, January 8, January 9 revolution? Was she like in the middle of the, is that where they got her?
I'm not exactly sure. From what I understand, she disappeared about 19 days ago, and they couldn't find
Okay.
her, and then they they've been getting very, very short phone calls from the prison, only a couple of minutes, where they cannot disclose, like, where she is, and that basically she communicated through so many words or whatever that, she was forced to cooperate, basically. And so, like, we all know what that means. And yeah, so they've only heard from her, like, about 4 days ago, and
Okay.
now they're, like, coming out trying to get attention on it. And
The video.
Armin, I'll get you all of the information for the posts and the confessions and all the information that the family has released.
Okay. Thank you. And yeah, go
Armin,
on.
if you get the video, can you translate it for me from Persian, and then I can send it already and they won't do a fuss about it?
Susanna, first, I'm very sorry about your friend, and you have nothing to be ashamed of or to apologize for. The very empathy you're showing is, in no insignificant manner, separates you from the bastards we're fighting. And so, that being said, on to the more operationally significant part of what I want to ask is, are you on the discussion board? Because
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't really post there, but I'm about to right now.
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the same thing I sent to Armin and to Federico from Italy, and we'll take it from there.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
No worries.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank
All
you for
right,
everything,
Danny.
Armin.
Next, we have Jewish Samantha.
Shalom, dude. My question is, do you think that if the US were to annex Greenland, it would help make the case that the US is trying to conquer other countries and therefore help strengthen the argument for people that the Shah really is just a puppet of the US regime, of the US empire? Because, just proof that the US is trying to conquer other countries and take over other countries and therefore help make that plausible case that the Shah is just a US empire or puppet.
Conquer has a very specific meaning. If you financially incentivize the people in a region to become part of your country, that's not conquering. That is basically diplomatic negotiation. The same way United States got Alaska, right? So, I mean, the people in Greenland, how many people live there? It's like 60,000 people only. So, is it 60,000? I think it was 60,000, 55,000. Thank you. So it should, like, I know a lot of them say they don't want to be part of the US, but honestly, 55,000 people is low enough for you to become financially incentivize them. I mean, they always wanted to get removed from, Denmark at some point, anyways. But I think a lot of people will change their position once they are financially incentivized enough. So that's not conquering. That
May
is
I?
just, and I think,
What if
and
the
I
US
think
can't
also,
financially incentivize?
huh?
What if the US
What?
can't or doesn't financially incentivize? What if the US just goes
then
for
it
it
then it
anyway?
won't then it won't happen then it won't happen. And also, I think it's a good idea for Greenland to be part of the United States.
May
But Jeffrey, what do
Okay,
you
but
think
let's
about this? Yeah, go on.
let's
Go
say
on.
you can't financially incentivize, they don't want to do it, and they're refusing, and the only way the US can do it is to just, kind of force its will upon the people.
Okay, but even if that happens, that has nothing to do with like Princess Pahlavi's position. So it would be very hypocritical for somebody to say like, "Oh, so we should be against Princess Pahlavi," because it would be a contradiction. You're saying like, "Oh, we should respect the will of the people in Greenland," right? And then now you're ignoring the will of the
Mhm.
people in Iran, right?
I
So
would still support
anybody,
Prince Reza Pahlavi.
no, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about those people. When you are in a war, whatever help you could get, it doesn't really matter the moral judgment people have on the help that you could get, right? You're in the middle of war for survival. Even if other people think like, oh, these are imperialist, evil, who gives a shit? We're dying. We need help from wherever we could get. And if it's America, so be it. I mean, I love America, but even if America was bad, I will still take that help. And anybody who says, like, anybody who wants to turn against Trump because he's ignoring the will of the people in Greenland, that only to then go and then ignore the will of the people in Iran, wanting Pahlavi back in Iran by coming and saying, like, he's a puppet. I mean, here's the thing: the people who consider Princess Pahlavi to be a puppet of America, they say that anyways. Like, they're not waiting for any, like, Greenland is irrelevant to this whole conversation. We already have enough information to show that the will of the Iranian people is Pahlavi. So we're not going to have more people saying that, because these are the same people who would have said that regardless.
May I just really quickly add something about Greenland?
Sure, yeah.
So I understand the concern, but the discussions between the United States and Greenland and Denmark right now are actually not about the US annexing Greenland. I think really what it amounts to is the US being given some land in Greenland to build some military bases. So that's really what it's going to amount to. And also, you have to remember kind of how President Trump operates with negotiations. He starts off with a big dramatic sounding ask, and then he ends up meeting in the middle, which is what he wanted in the first place.
The whole Greenland thing is just communists around the world always wanted to act like United States is an imperialist force, and that never made sense ever, because America was always anti-imperialist. It was actually created as an anti-imperialist force, and it always remained an anti-imperialist force. For now that, like, this whole Greenland narrative finally gives them an excuse to suggest that, like, oh, look, this is imperialism, right? So that's why they're jumping on this whole narrative that, oh, they're going to conquer in Greenland, so this is imperialism. That's why people are talking about this, but it has nothing to do with imperialism. But yeah, Jeffrey, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. Okay. So to bounce off a couple of the comments, Armin is right that annexation is a very specific term with a very specific definition within geopolitical or geostrategic parlance. It means forced projection with the goal of conquest or forced territorial cessation. I'm sending my military there. I'm conquering this land. I now own this land. I determine what happens on this land. That being said, I think what Samantha is saying, and this is probably in part due to the kind of running discussion we're having on one of the posts I post on the discussion board, is she's saying that the annexation of Greenland would become an example of, say, the members of the autocratic bloc to use as part, like a backdrop for the strategic information influence operations, and that might erode national will, or say U.S.-led Western Alliance will, to support our allies in other areas. And to Armin's point, though, I mean, and I understand the concern. There's a couple issues with that. One, to Armin's statement that those people that say that are already going to say that, indeed, they're already saying that now. Two, to Brandon's point, there's a very particular way that President Trump approaches, discourse or diplomacy within members of the Western Alliance, specifically Western NATO bloc members that have free road underneath the U.S. security umbrella, because they consistently try to find ways to go back to the good old days where we pay all their defense, and then they can sit there and allocate it, the money that they are by law supposed to allocate towards defense, towards things like social entitlement programs, all the while telling us about how, like, Americans suck and all this other stuff. Even if they got, like those people in the Western NATO, Western European NATO allies that have traditionally free road underneath the U.S. security umbrella, do all their, political maneuvering, and they win the midterms and all this other stupid shit. It's not possible because we cannot cover all bets anymore. Not where it stands right now. We're in the process of fixing that. So there's a reason that President Trump is taking the position he's taking, because he's not going to allow, well, if you need Greenland for, like, all these strategic reasons, are you going to give us a pass on our NATO defense? No, you need to pay your bills. You need to pay 5%. Period. That's it. There's no debate. Finally, if it does come to annexing Greenland, even with the blowback, you have to weigh relative risks, Samantha, just like I outlined in the discussion board, right? Greenland has a very unique, specific strategic significance regarding ensuring both Western Hemisphere and our NATO allies' security against an increasingly belligerent Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state and Chinese Communist Party for all the reasons I outlined, whether it's strategic missile defense, hypersonic defense, guarding a very particular gap regarding subs coming off a very particular, port in Russia and the rest of it.
Shipping lanes as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of like my short and skinny of it. I just wanted to bounce off that. Maybe I can help tighten that chat group. If people want to look at the discussion going on there's a thread and discussion board where we're having that. I kind of posted one of the slides that were part of the reports that I put up about a year ago to people in this administration regarding Greenland, and you can see it go back and forth, and then you can hopefully make up your own mind.
All right.
I would call LF next. Hello, LF.
All right. LF1, LF2,
Alex, you mean
LF.
me?
Oh, she's unmuted.
No, LF.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
I might be in a slightly noisy place, but I first want to say thank you to Ruth, Shalom, and hello to Susanna, especially. If you can't hear me, I typed in the chat. It's really, my question is about the MK and how they managed to get funding to
right.
be able to pay off these people. Thanks.
Elif, can you write it in the chat? Your question that how did the MEK, because your audio quality is really bad, are you asking if MEK, how did MEK get funding? Hello? Okay,
I think she had two parts, but that's the first question.
Okay, write the second part in the chat. The first part is, after the fall of the Islamic Republic, their main source of funding originally was Saddam was funding them. After the fall of Saddam, the educated guess is that Saudi Arabia has been funding them. I'm not sure if that's true, but that has been the educated guess. Right now, I don't know where they're getting their funding at the moment, but they did make a lot of money from Saddam and at some point from Saudi Arabia.
Does MEK not hate Saudi Arabia as much as the Islamic Republic?
No, I mean the MEK works with anybody that has ready to support them. They have zero principles when it comes to survival. They keep changing their mask based on whatever they need. I mean, they used to wanting to destroy Israel, and then they ended up working with Israel. Like, they talk about a shift in direction, right? Like, one of their major agendas was to destroy Israel, and then at some point they became, so it's weird. Like, their entire goal is like do whatever and anything that is needed to just basically become more powerful.
Okay, I was just curious because although I know their numbers are not supported, say, in Iran, I see them pop up. I even meet random people who spout their language, and I was wondering, how do they keep themselves going in this way? And I've never heard anyone talk about their funding. So I thought I'd ask you. Thanks, Simon.
That's a very good question, by the way. We always get on the Persian channel, we always said that Saudi Arabia, and we have never seen any evidence for that. But that's the assumption that we all make all the time. Apparently, it's not we don't know.
There are too many interests that Saudi Arabia need to work on. I don't think it's something that will be advantageous for them right now.
So here, the MEK's funding is notoriously opaque, but it primarily stems from three main sources: historical backing, a significant endowment allegedly stashed away from their former patron Saddam Hussein prior to 2003. So I was correct about that. Regional rivals. Widespread consistent among intelligence analysis points to Saudi Arabia as primary current benefactor, using the group as leverage against Tehran. And also the diaspora's narrative, the group officially claims to be funded by voluntary donations from Iranian expatriates, BS, though experts argue these funds are insufficient to cover the massive global lobbying and infrastructure costs. Okay, so Saudi Arabia then.
Oh, can I just one little thought I wanted to add to this? I know a lot of groups do all sorts of jiggery pokery with money, and they have. And I saw in your film that you put up all these different affiliations they had. So I'm wondering if they also play that globalist game of creating all these different companies and shell companies and moving money around and having, you know, people in the West pay in and presenting themselves as something else.
Yeah. So everything they do is very hidden, so it's hard to come up with an exact understanding on how they do it, but they have years of basically experience of moving money secretly from different companies to different lobby groups. So it's actually a mystery. All of this is a mystery. But
I found a really nice article from Daily Wire about the military buildup in the Middle East. It's very detailed, kind of says everything about what the president is sending there. So I'm just going to link that in the text chat in here for you guys.
Nice. Thank you. Post it in the chat. This is good. Thank you for that. Okay. I'll look into that.
So
All right.
next on the list I have Aaron, but if you're driving, I can come back to you.
Aaron?
I am all right. I'm used to this, so I run a business.
Okay.
I'm hands-free.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so, first off, I do want to apologize. I'm horrible with names, but to the lady who has families in Iran, I do apologize about what's going on with you, and I hope you get news soon. Hopefully, internet gets fully restored sooner rather than later. But my big question is, so I know that the EU has come out and finally basically said the IRGC is a terrorist organization. But like one of the things I'm not hearing is a lot of countries, like maybe a handful, are actually speaking up with that statement from the EU. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
What do you mean handful of countries? Like can you clarify?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of countries in the EU. I mean, I know Sweden was like one of the first to come out, but like I've only really heard France, now Great Britain, and I heard Spain hadn't quite said it yet, but they were all like signaling support for the EU. And yeah. So I just kind of want to know if you think of anything of the silence from other nations not saying anything.
So yeah, I mean, especially France, Italy, and Spain have been horrible at this. Like they are very sensitive regarding cutting relationship with the Islamic Republic. They are very much, and also a lot of these countries, like also Norway, for example, and Ireland, they have been taking the wrong side of they're very much in favor of the Palestinian cause side, like they're on that side of things, and they are very hesitant to come against the Islamic Republic. I mean, especially France has always historically been on the wrong side of all of this. So for us, this is not a surprise. In fact, the surprise has been the fact that they agreed to accept the Islamic Republic as a terrorist group. And we kind of suspect that this has something to do with the US. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, because a lot of these countries would not want to do this. I think Trump might have done something because just before they announced it, they seemed like they were going to resist doing anything like this. And all of a sudden, the news came out that every single one of the members of the European Union, all of them came out and said, like, okay, we're doing this. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. There does seem to be some pressure from the United States, or maybe basically Trump gave them something in return. I don't know. But yeah, we expect them to push. I mean, there seems to be, even though they now have classified the IRGC as a terrorist group, they're still insisting on maintaining some form of a relationship with the Islamic Republic, just maybe not with IRGC. So they still haven't gotten to the point where they consider the Islamic Republic to be something that you need to completely cut relationships with, which is, by the way, very telling because Europeans always try to look at Americans as being not caring about human rights and only caring about economic interests rather than human rights. But this is basically the Europeans after one of the greatest massacres in modern history continuing to want to maintain relationship with the Islamic Republic. Like this is going to be looked back on with shame when it comes to like in history, because people are going to remember this. The Islamic Republic is like Nazis, right? So the fact that after, I mean, at least with the Nazis, people could claim like, oh, we didn't know what they were doing. Like they could at least claim ignorance, right? Because a lot of the Holocaust, the level of the crimes that they were committing became apparent after the Nazis fell, right? So if people didn't, but now we could like this is right after all of these videos came out and all of the evidence came out that the Islamic Republic is just killing their own people on such a high scale that no other country has done in modern history against their own people. And still Europeans are still insisting on maintaining some form of a relationship with this Nazi like regime for their economic interests. So any claim of moral superiority by the Europeans when it comes to human rights should be laughed at from now forever, basically, every time they want to bring that up ever. But I don't even know if that answers your question, Aaron. Does that answer your question?
No, I mean, especially when you brought up the point about history, because that's kind of been my whole ordeal is that they're kind of like looking at the writing on the wall that no matter what, U.S. intervention or not, the Islamic Republic's done. Like their credibility's gone. Like they're never. You cannot say you are a nation, a Western nation with classic liberal ideals, and do business with a country like that after what's gone on. So I think
Exactly.
regardless, they've crossed a line that they know there's no coming back on. They're trying to be on the right side of history.
The fact is that given that the Europeans would never agree to list IRGC as a terrorist group, suggests to me that the fact that they have done so has convinced a lot of them that the Islamic Republic is about to fall. And that's the only way that they would be convinced to do such a thing. Because if it wasn't going to fall, they would have wanted to maintain relationship with it. The fact that they have crossed to that far maybe is because the intelligence agencies within European countries are telling the politicians that the game is over for the Islamic Republic. So that might be a good sign.
Okay,
May
good
I
deal.
add some?
Thank you for that. The next point I wanted to cover the most was with America and what I think we're seeing with Trump and why I think people need to not worry as much. One of the biggest things that we're seeing is he got elected. He had a very specific agenda. And this was 2016, his first election. And right in the middle of it, his what he was hoping would be his second election, he got interrupted. So he has essentially 4 years to accomplish as much as he can. And, Trump is not patient. And he also does not lay out his cards, like where they're at, what he's going to do, how he's going to do it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, which I think is like was brought up earlier, he wants military bases, but I also think he wants to ensure that now and in the long-term future, China or Russia have nothing to do with any mineral resources in Greenland. He kind of like Venezuela, like you've robbed them of oil. And I think that, and part of Trump, what's in the back of Trump's head with Iran, that's a major source of oil for China. So geopolitically, this all lines up with our own strategic interests. But then on the humanitarian level, as someone who was a soldier and that, was in the United States military, we do kind of bring some of our ideals with us, like freedom of speech, freedom of the media, the right to bear arms. Like a lot of people don't realize that we did not disarm the Iraqi people when we invaded Iraq. They got to keep their guns. And we are one of the most unrestrictive first world Western countries when it comes to these rights. I mean, there are limitations, but there are very, very, very few. And I think kind of like, I like to bring this up, like Armin and Goldie. Armin, how many American fans do you think you have comparatively to other nations? Just answer that real quick.
I think at least half of them are American.
So I would say out of a portion of the world, that's a very large percentage of Americans using their unrestricted freedom of speech and our media to broadcast a voice for people in Iran. Would you agree with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Would anybody agree or disagree that that's a bad or good thing? And that's kind of where I'll end my topic there.
No, that's a good
Um,
thing, obviously. Yeah. So honestly, I think that America's domination by any means necessary, to me, in my opinion, is a good thing, because the alternative is Chinese domination. And all we have to look at is compare the values of America and of the values from the CCP. And then it's obvious which side we should be rooting for. Even if there are some American politicians that we might not like, even if there are some American methods that we do not like, we have to pick a side. Everywhere America is winning, the whole world is winning. Because everywhere America is losing, it's the CCP that is winning. Honestly, I don't think among the other challengers to the United States, anyone is as significant as the CCP.
Until about a
Yes.
week ago, I wanted the CCP to win. It's
Yeah.
not obvious
Yeah,
to
I
the
know.
average American.
I know. Okay. Well, the fact that you changed sides is a huge win. So I'm very optimistic about the future of the world when Samantha changed the side to our side, right? So
A win is a win.
so
Okay, you know
yes.
what? A win is a win.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So this is why if Iran becomes a US ally instead of a CCP ally, that's a win for the world. This is why if Greenland, if somehow, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it or not, but if Greenland becomes part of the United States, I don't know if that's going to happen, or even if it doesn't happen, something like close to that happens, that's a win for the world. If Venezuela becomes closer to the United States instead of Putin and the CCP, that's a win for the world. If Cuba becomes closer to the United States, that's a win for the world. Energy and rare earth minerals are key. The future of the world is the technologies of the future depends a lot of like it requires a lot of energy, and it requires a lot of rare earth minerals. And when it comes to these 2 points, unlike other things in the economy, it's a zero sum game. So whatever America doesn't have, China, like the CCP, will have. So you like Americans and anybody else who supports classical liberal values, they should be rooting for America's maximum win in more control over more energy and more rare earth minerals, because as with whatever flaws the United States has, is basically the main supporter of all the values that we support here. It's the U.S. military. Yeah, guys, the values, supporting values is beautiful, but you cannot support these values without a significant military strength. Just cheerleading these values is not enough. We need a significant military strength to back them, and we are so lucky that we live in an age where the world's most significant military power is supporting the best values in the world.
Well, I always remind people, if you want peace, prepare for war. End of story. You're not going to ever keep your peace if you're not prepared to defend it.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you want to hand the EU over to China?
Well, the EU is becoming okay. So first of all, the EU doing more trades with China is never going to be handing over the EU to China, right? So
Not to mention
Aaron,
China uses
Aaron,
economic muscle.
right? So you just remember that EU is becoming less and less significant when it comes to the power that they have. They're still an
That can
economic
always change.
powerhouse, but you cannot replace America with the CCP. Okay, the economic power that the United States has over Europe, you could do more deals with China, but nothing will replace the United States. The European countries are not even viable as countries without America's military support for their security. They can't even defend themselves against Russia right now, right, without American help. Look at what is left of NATO without America, right? So I think a lot of the, oh, we're going to go to China and leave America, I think a lot of that is an empty threat. There's nothing that could replace America's economy. There's nothing that could replace the security that America's military brings to Europe.
You don't have that
All you're going to
attitude towards
do,
Greenland.
all you're going to get is some more trade with China and some less trade with America. That is never going to be as significant as just replacing the United States as an ally. Nothing
Well,
can
then
replace
you
it.
just made
But
the
even
case
if,
for why we don't need to annex Greenland, because Greenland can't replace, the US with China.
no, so no, United States needs having Greenland will give it more control over Greenland rather than going through agreements and asking permissions to
But
do
it'll
this
give
and
it
this and
less
that.
control over the EU. It'll make an enemy of the EU.
It would not make an enemy. It will just make them slightly annoyed. That will not turn
Well, it
it
will
will
make
not
them
turn them
more
into an enemy.
mad. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
but not
so
it would not turn
like
them.
more
It would
control
not
over
turn.
Greenland, but further distancing
Okay,
slightly with the
Samantha,
EU.
I think your miscalculation is that you're basically treating geopolitics like it's basically high school kids being mad with each other. Okay, at the end of the at the end of the day, what speaks the most is not who you like and who you don't like and what agreements that you write on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, might, who has the most might and who has the most military and economic leverage, that's what makes the difference. At the end of the day, if America, like, you could say like, oh, America, I'm going to speak to the hand, I'm mad at you, like, what you did this. Okay, at the end of the day, if the American consumer, okay, has such high purchasing power that at the end of the day, if you want that, you need to have a relationship with America, no matter how much you're upset with America's behavior. At the end of the day, you cannot say no to that. So
Well, then you made the
economic
argument for
leverage
why
or military
Greenland.
leverage and military leverage is more important than this drama high school kid stuff. But go on, and then
Well,
we go to
then,
Jeffrey.
again, you just made the argument that we don't have to worry about Greenland saying no to America because Greenland can't say no to America if countries can't say no to America.
What Greenland can't say no to America means that we could have Greenland for America. Like, what do you mean, like,
Or
can't
we could
say no
just,
to America?
have a military base on Greenland because Greenland can't say no to America, and we don't need to annex it to put the military base or keep our military base
No, no,
there.
you're going to have a lot more. Here, Jeffrey wants to respond to that. Jeffrey.
So I think what Armin's trying to differentiate between is there's a big difference between, say, the EU, the so Greek, like there's a difference between people leveraging economic connections and defending against military intervention, right? So, yeah, Greenland can't defend itself against Putin or the Chicoms. Let's say it just, even status quo of Greenland is not sustainable for the United States or United States led Western alliance because of the increased belligerency borne out by, I know you don't like it, Samantha, right? Borne out by Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, the Chinese Communist Party. So defending Greenland or expanding our abilities on Greenland to counter that increased threat is not the same as, well, if you do that, then Europe's going to go to China. I mean, Europe, like the Western European allies have already been trying to play that two sides against the middle. That's all done. Daddy America's back. It isn't going to matter how many protesters bitch in the street. We're done. We're all done with all the nonsense. It's all done. You can smile and laugh all you want, right? I mean, look, the very things that probably underwrote your support of the Chinese Communist Party, why not just supplant the Chinese Communist Party with America, right? I mean, if you supported the CCP, by definition, you supported a top down dictatorial system that is unbelievably brutal. Why not support system leadership with one that's not? You still get the system leadership, just not one that's horrible.
These are the arguments that people are making for going. So ownership removes the tenant risk. A future independent Greenland or a new Danish government could revoke base access to or invite rivals like China to build nearby. Resource sovereignty. Greenland holds massive rare earth deposits. Ownership lets the US mine them under American law, bypassing foreign regulations and securing a supply chain independent of China. Arctic gatekeeping. As ice melts, the Northwest Passage becomes a global shipping shortcut. Owning Greenland means controlling the toll booth of the 21st century trade. Full sovereignty allows the US to install advanced missile interceptors anywhere, anytime, without needing foreign parliamentary approval or diplomatic negotiations. Bottom line is bases US bases provide presence. Sovereignty provides a permanent resource rich fortress that can't be taken away by a change in local politics. But more importantly than that, it just streamlines, because when you're a tenant there, you have to go through so many regulations to do simple things. Once all of this is under American law, you could just basically do it much more straightforward and much faster, and without going through a lot of bureaucracy.
I'd like to gently suggest that we go to next on the list.
Yes, let's go there.
All right, so next I have Alex.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to Samantha for switching sides from supporting CCP to supporting America. Because as someone who lived for 11 years under you, I don't want to see what happens next. I mean, this ideology has killed 100 million people and made billions of them miserable. And you don't want to know what happens to your food supply when they take over. So thank you very much, Samantha, for doing that. And I also want to say my condolences to Susie for losing someone there. I know how it feels. Anyways, someone who has lived in a communist country, I want to mention that there are some similarities between the communists and Islamism, right? And differences too. The differences are that the communism relies on a class warfare to pit people against each other and kill whoever is going against the government themselves. And the Islamism is relying on religion as an excuse to get rid of infidels. So that's the big difference there. The other thing I want to ask is, did you guys see any of the videos where you have IRGC children ignoring Sharia laws overseas? Did you guys ever see that? It's like a cult.
Yeah. We shared it in the show, and I'm gonna share it in the show today again. By the way, Neil
Yep.
Bunny sent me a video.
Finally, I have a question to Armin. After the revolution is done, is there going to be a firearms training and a requirement to basically learn the history of what happened and doing something that prevents it from ever happening again? Because you guys are having your own Holocaust over there.
Right. So you're talking about our education policy and
Yeah.
also
Measures
whether
that
people.
prevent this from happening again. And the reason why I say it's very important is because I'm also a grandson of a Holocaust survivor. Once people learned of the Holocaust, the Jews said to leave the concentration camps alone, don't demolish them, don't do anything, and just have tours every year to Poland, to Germany, to Austria to visit those camps as a living proof that it actually happened. Same thing with the October 7th. They left those kibbutzes alone, they left those buildings alone, and they basically have tours of journalists to go there and witness what happened physically. Are you guys going to have something like that? And are you guys
All
going
right.
to
So,
have physical firearms in the civilian hands?
all right. So let me answer now, if I may. Okay, so first of all, like, I obviously can't speak for the future of Iran. Okay, what happens in Iran is going to be determined based on the politicians that we elect, right, in a democratic system. With regards to firearms, whether we're going to have something like the Second Amendment, whether Iranian people are going to be allowed to own weapons or not. I don't know where that is going to go. Is it also with regards to the education policy? Again, that's going to be determined based on who are the people that we elect in our parliament, and also based on based on the people we elect to write our constitution. So I am almost sure, if I had to guess, that we are going to have the same, just like we have Holocaust memorials. I'm pretty sure the Iranian people are going to have a lot of memorials and remembrance ceremonies every year for what happened during the massacre of January 8th and January 9th. I'm pretty sure their names are going to be on walls. I'm pretty sure their pictures are going to be everywhere as heroes. I'm pretty sure the stories are going to be told for decades and decades. I'm pretty sure the history of what happened, and not just what happened on January 8th and January 9th, the history of our fight against the Islamic Republic for the past 47 years is going to be part of our education system. I'm pretty sure not only that, the history of Reza Shah and Muhammad Reza Shah, the proper history of them, is going to be part of our education system. I'm pretty sure our ancient history properly is now going to be taught in our education system. I'm pretty sure many are going to have so many cultural programs regarding our ancient history, our culture, the continuation of Muhammad Reza Shah's attempt to reintroduce Iranians to their ancient identity and history is going to now come back with full force. And this time, the whole country is going to, the vast majority of the country is going to be behind it, unlike when Muhammad Reza Shah was doing this against the wishes of many of the mullahs and the leftists in Iran. This time, the whole country is going to be behind it. So I'm pretty sure on that front, we're going to, like, if I had to guess again, I can't speak for all of Iran, but if I had to guess, I think we're going to go full force on that front, when it comes to, it's going to be basically very similar to how Jews remember the Holocaust and the lessons that they learned from that and the education regarding that in their school. So I think that's what you could expect in Iran. With regards to firearms, I honestly, I don't know which way we're going to go. I see a lot of Iranians, after the experience they have with the Islamic Republic, very much in favor of something like the Second Amendment. However, I also see a lot of people arguing that the country is unstable in the first couple of years, and that's going to cause maybe chaos. I don't know which side is correct. I just know that that's going to be determined. So I am actually less clear which side the country is going to come down on, whether we're going to be armed, not armed. I do think that maybe for the initial few years at least, because we need to give monopoly of being armed to the central government, just so that we have less chaos. And then maybe after we get to a stable point, maybe we could talk about whether the people should be armed or not. But I don't know. I mean, I think, guys, being armed for Americans make a lot of sense. We don't know if this makes sense in other countries as well. We have to see. I do really believe it makes sense in America, right? A lot of countries, democracies depends on America being the world superpower. So there is no superpower be above America to make sure America remains a democracy. So that's why we need to arm American citizens to make sure America also remains a democracy. For many other countries, being a democracy makes sense because the main motivation for being a democracy is because it's easier to trade with democracies. Democracies are more stable, democracies are more prosperous, they have freer markets, and therefore they grow faster and they're easy to be allies with America. So as long as America is a democracy, that creates a lot big motivation for other countries to either be a democracy or move towards being a democracy. But for America, we don't have anything like that. That's why Americans need to be armed. Does that answer your question, Alex? All right. So, Danny,
Next on the list, I have Jeffrey.
do you want to speak to this, Jeffrey?
Oh, well, I was just gonna say real quick to Susanna I can't pronounce her last name. Check your messages.
Thank you.
No worries. Send up the chain.
All right. In that case, I have Richard next.
Hi, thanks a lot. I just wanted to bring something to your attention, and definitely to Jeffrey. If you've read President Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, He talks a lot about negotiation with parties that are known not to be credible and the techniques that you use. I think if you think back to the 12-day war and you look at the extreme obfuscation that Trump used, basically using the perceived negotiations more as a weapon to confuse the enemy, even going so far as to creating artificial tension with Israel to throw them off the scent as to the cooperation we were doing. I can see you agree. This actually relates back to another book I love. It's the Art of War by Sun Tzu. He talks a lot about using the carrot of negotiation with an enemy known not to be trustworthy as a means to confuse them. I think it's entirely possible, I don't know if you'd agree, that this entire smokescreen of last minute negotiations with the Islamic Republic over their nuclear program is simply another, sleight of hand. You love Trump or hate him, he is the master of the diplomatic sleight of hand. If you heard that last part.
So Richard, I have a question. Like, first of all, sorry, did I cut you off?
I think I don't know. I saw my mic went off at the last thing I said, which is just that the Trump was a master of the diplomatic sleight of hand. Love him or hate him.
So, based on what you're saying, do you think it's accurate to say that, how we expected Americans to attack shortly after the massacre on January 8th and January 9th, and everybody expected them to attack, and it didn't happen? Do you think so? A lot of people now are saying that the whole point of that was for the Islamic Republic to move assets, to move money, to basically prepare their air defense, to make all the communications that they need to do, thinking that the attack is imminent. And now, and while they were doing that, the Americans and the Israeli collected a lot of information regarding how what would they do, and where all their assets are, and where all the key people are, and what all the communication lines are, and what is the defense mechanism when the attack happens. And now, when the attack does happen, all of that information is very useful to Americans, and these are strategies and methods that cannot be easily changed. So, do you think that making it seem like they're going to attack was a method by the Trump administration to collect all of that information?
I certainly wouldn't put it past him. And I think that argument is reinforced by the actions they took immediately after the aborted attack to basically create the perception that it was stopped by local Arab powers or even by Israel because they didn't think it was going to be. It certainly is pretty suspicious. But I would like to say that if that attack did happen on after January 9th, it would be the only time in Trump's entire, I guess, 5-year presidency now that an attack occurred when it was expected. Trump's attacks never occur when they're expected. Again, that sleight of hand technique is very useful. He's caught every single enemy by surprise. Always keep, taking the bait, so to speak. He often plays against expectations, or by knowing what the enemy expects, he uses that to the advantage of his strategy.
That makes sense. Okay, that's very interesting. I'm going to mention that in the show. Thank you, Richard.
Anytime.
So awesome point by Richard. It was a really awesome point that he brought up, and I saw that Jeffrey liked that a lot too. I have some news relating to that from Reuters here. I'm not sure if you guys have heard the news about Friday yet.
No, go ahead.
So Steve Witkoff, which has been, for those of you that follow diplomatic efforts by the Trump administration, he's been kind of the point man. He's going to be meeting with Abbas Araghchi on Friday in Turkey.
Yes, in Turkey. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mentioned that.
But to Richard's point, we very well could be looking at the same exact pump fake type of strategy here with the negotiations. In fact, I think that's what we're looking at.
So let me actually mention what I said in the show. Those negotiations might actually be serious. And again, I'm not against them, because anything that the Islamic Republic gives up right now is basically going to defang them more before the attack happens, right? Like I mentioned, that the more you negotiate with the Islamic Republic, like the way Obama and Biden did, it benefited the Islamic Republic because it would have just bought them time to rebuild and recover and basically get stronger, right? But now, the negotiations used to be a tactic for the Islamic Republic just so that they could become a bigger threat. And they used to think that they're fooling the Americans, and they actually were when it comes to Biden and Obama. But right now with Trump, negotiations is basically making the war easier, because all you're doing is basically remove, if they say yes to any of the terms of the agreement, is basically a removal of one of their deterrent capabilities before you actually have to take it out militarily. So it makes sense to negotiate with them, because look at the things that are on the table, other than recognizing the state of Israel, which is not a requirement that they will never accept. But we have the 60% enriched uranium, we have the ballistic missiles, we have support for the Islamic terrorists around the region, the proxies, and we have the killing of Iranians. Right now, the Islamic Republic, the only thing that it could be willing to part with is the enriched uraniums, because even though that's a deterrent capability that they have a little bit, it's not as significant as the other things, right? The ballistic missiles is the most important one. But imagine if Trump gets to, first of all, Trump comes in and says, like, oh, we want all of them. But let's say the Islamic Republic is not going to agree to that, because there's no way they're going to agree to all of that. But then the Islamic Republic says, well, Trump wants something more than a lot, but then he usually agrees to something a lot less. So IRGC is now offering Trump to basically get the 60% enriched uraniums and put it in Turkey. If I was Trump, I would take that deal and still attack after. Because if the war happens, they might spread this enriched uranium so far and wide around the region. They might give some of them to Hashtashabi to take to Iraq, some of them to Zainabian to take to Pakistan, and some of them to Fatimian to take to Afghanistan. And it's going to be a nightmare to figure out where all of this is and basically trace them and make sure that they don't turn into eventually 90% enriched uranium somewhere and turn into a dirty bomb that one day they're going to be used in Europe or in Canada or United States, right? That's going to be a nightmare. So if I was Trump, I would like, let me see if I could get this out of their hands, okay? And then attack anyways, right? So that's why this negotiation makes sense, because it just makes the process of removing them a lot. I mean, why not? I mean, imagine if Trump is going to attack 2 months from now or 3 months from now. I don't know when he's going to attack. If that's the case, then in the meantime, why not see what I can get from them before I attack, right?
Very good point. 2 questions to follow up your points here. Number 1, if they were to make that deal for them to hand over some of their enriched uranium, what's to stop them from just enriching more in the meantime? Because according to most of the analyses, not all of the equipment for enriching the uranium was destroyed, and they're actually already working on new sites. And then number 2, regarding the negotiations, how likely do you think it is that they actually come to that agreement or any agreement?
Well, okay. So the first question, I mean, they are working very hard on enriching uranium in their other new sites very deep underground. So they are actively moving in that direction. So that is happening. Whether with like separate, so they are basically what Arakshi is trying to do is basically give up the 60% enriched uraniums that they had from the Fordo site, but to basically see if they could make the Americans not attack. But yeah, they are still enriching uranium, and they're working on enriching uranium in the other sites for sure. They're never going to give up on that. And that's their only remaining deterring capability after all the proxies, and they use most of their ballistic. After losing so many of their rocket launchers and using a lot of their missiles on Israel in the 12-day war, they feel very naked. So they're never going to give up their enrichment of uranium. What was your second question?
Like, how likely
Oh,
do you think
what
that
are the
they
chances?
actually Yeah.
Yeah. So to all of the terms, zero. To all of the terms, that would be their, like, if they give everything up, everything that they want in those terms, that would be their very last day, because then they are completely naked. Like then
Yeah.
it's basically it would be so it's like a walk in the park for Israel and the Iranian people to then do regime change if they give up everything that the US is asking for. So there is no way they're going to agree to that. That would be their very last day if they do, right? Basically, America is saying, like, hey, we won't attack if you just give up all your deterrent capabilities. Well, if they give up all of their deterrent capabilities, then America doesn't even need to attack anymore. The Israelis and Iranians will be able to easily just behead them the very day after, right? But when it comes to some of they might be like, how about we just give you this? And again, it seemed like the thing that they want to give is the 60% enriched uranium that they had left over from Fordo or other places, right? I mean, Jeffrey has some points to add to that. Do you want to respond to this? Yeah.
So Armin touched on a lot of things again. The baseline, which is given the pseudo theological motives that underwrite the Mullah regime, and subsequent very little elasticity, meaning change of behavior, because they frame all their position gain or loss metaphysically. It's not like fighting the Soviet Union where you can hold Moscow hostage and all that other stuff. The probability of them ever giving up their pursuit of nuclear weapons or WMDs in general or aggression towards Israel and their neighbors is very low. So what about why would they give up the 60% uranium? Well, because of the operational impact of revolutionary technologies and subsequent alternative means to provide or to obtain fissile material or alternative WMDs. Just when it comes to fissile material. So yeah, we hit Fort Al, Isfahan, Natanz. Donald did the right thing. Very much disrupted the Mullah regime's traditional approach towards enriching uranium. Tragically, that's not the only means that is available to the Mullah regime to obtain enriched uranium, whether it's getting turnkey systems from Pakistan, from the Chinese Communist Party, from Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state, or leveraging things like SILIX, which is laser-based enrichment. Again, it fits in a garage. It requires very little electricity. It has no UF6 outgassing. I mean, it's very hard to detect. What does it mean? It means even giving up the 60% uranium, given the elasticity of the Mullah regime's intent to obtain fissile material, their ability to leverage alternative means and get what they need, in other words, their breakout capability like that, is rapidly growing. Or maybe they go after alternative WMDs, like, their profile is different. They go after bioweapons, which is real easy to do. The point is the Mullah regime has to go. Witkoff's view of things, at least from my people, the people I know in the administration, different people have different ideas on how to best approach the world. Witkoff is a billionaire businessman, so he sees things as the way a businessman would, right? Economic interdependence, and we could do a deal. This is not a person. These, like the Mullahs, aren't people you can do a deal with where they're going to hold true to it. And Donald knows that, which is why Armin and a couple other people, Richard, had mentioned like what President Trump thinks about dealing with actors that you can't trust, right? You never want to seem desperate to have a deal, and you always deal from strength and use leverage. You always try to keep the opposition.
So, Jeffrey, if they were to make that deal, do you think that the end result of it would simply be that more time is bought, like the timeline just gets stretched a little bit?
Nope. The only thing that the Mueller regime is probably trying to do is buy whatever little time they can to try and cross the asymmetric deterrence threshold, like Ajida, defined as nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, and become kind of like the North Korea of the Middle East, as Armin had said.
I don't think
Or
that
as,
President
say,
Trump
Marco
is going to be
Rubio said.
happy with that. I don't think he's going to go for that personally.
He understands who they are.
That concludes my questions. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. So I just kind of wanted to add on to that, power dynamics. A nuclear Iran in the Middle East means they are the dominant force in the region. They are a resourceful country. They are not North Korea. In North Korea, they have nuclear arms, but at the end of the day, they are beholden to China. Iran would have the capability of being nuclear and not being beholden to anyone. And one thing I like to point out, nuclear armed nations do not have to follow this European rules established order through the UN. And that was proven like when Putin toppled Crimea, like just not even the war. He just took Crimea. So I kind of like to point out that a nuclear armed nation can do what they want and face less repercussions. And that's kind of just the point I'd like to just add on top of that, that I don't even think Arabic nations in the area publicly, say we don't want it to happen, but privately, I think they're like, we need this to happen, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
Thank
so
you.
the Arab countries in the region, well, not Qatar, but the rest of them, it seemed like they don't want a war unless it's going to completely top. They don't want to wound the Islamic Republic and let them then act like a wounded animal against them. They want they're basically either don't attack, or if you're gonna attack, just finish the job.